Please go to finneganswakenotes.net for a full explanation of the text, and please don't forget to hit the like button.
Welcome to episode 27 of the Reading Finnegans Wake in 200 Sessions podcast, where we analyze Finnegans Wake by James Joyce 3 pages at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us. Today, we are diving deep into a section of Finnegans Wake that feels, well, less like straightforward narrative and maybe more like a linguistic explosion.
That's a good way to put it.
We're navigating pages 86.32 through 90.33. It's essentially a pivotal court scene. Seems to be focused on HCE's alleged misconduct in Phoenix Park. Our mission today, I think, is not just to translate the chaos, but really to understand how Joyce is using this testimony, how he's building this incredible historical and mythical allegory that goes way beyond any supposed petty crime itself.
It's a truly dense stack of pages, you're right. And what makes this section so challenging and frankly so rewarding is that the trial operates simultaneously on several levels. It feels like, several things happening at once.
Okay, like what?
Well, on the surface, it's a legal cross-examination. But underneath, it's absolutely an allusion to Irish political history, particularly the violence. And then there's this cosmic commentary on history cycling, almost straight out of Giambattista Vico.
Right, the Viconian cycles. We keep coming back to those.
Exactly. So we're essentially trying to find the truth, if you can call it that, buried beneath this avalanche of deliberately confusing language shifts, identities blurring, people seeming to be other people, and just outright contradiction on almost every line.
So the truth isn't straightforward.
Not at all. I think the key, really, is to remember that in the wake, the accuser and the accused, the prosecution and the defense, they often kind of merge. They can be one and the same person or reflections of each other.
Okay, so we're searching for maybe universal guilt, played out in a very specific, almost local court setting.
Precisely. And we have, as our guides, two primary witnesses whose credibility is, let's say, compromised before they even open their mouths.
Right. The outline mentions WP, the witness for the prosecution.
Or perhaps warming pan, a substitute.
Ah, okay. And then Hyacinth O'Donnell, who seems to start as a witness or subject, but quickly morphs into the antagonist, doesn't he? Seems like a shim figure.
That's right. He embodies that antagonistic artistic sun figure.
All right, let's try and unpack this chaos. Section 1 starts with this. Eye, ear, nose, and throat witness, WP. So, our first witness, WP, the man who seems to see everything but, interestingly, touches nothing. Starting right at 86.32, he's introduced as an eye, ear, nose, and throat witness. Now, that's 4 of the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste. But the sense of touch is just missing. It's conspicuously absent. What do you think Joyce is suggesting by leaving out the most sort of fundamental physical sense?
Well, omission of touch, I think, is highly significant. If we assume, and it's a big assumption, that HCE's alleged crime is indeed sexual or physical in some way.
Which the text heavily hints at later.
Exactly. Then the absence of tactile confirmation from this witness suggests one of two things. Either he's geographically, physically removed from the event itself, or maybe his testimony is based purely on hearsay, rumor, observation from afar, rather than any direct physical experience.
So it distances him.
It does. Touch also grounds us in reality, doesn't it? And without it, the testimony immediately feels kind of superficial, detached, maybe unreliable.
And his identity is immediately framed as suspicious, too. The text says he is someone whom Wesleyan chapelgoers suspected of being a plainclothes priest. That's odd in itself.
It is a kind of religious ambiguity right off the bat.
But there are also these serious Dublin echoes here, right? Ones that kind of darken his status even further. The phrase ear, eye, nose, and throat specialist, that points directly towards Oliver St. John Gogarty, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Gogarty, the famous doctor, the wit, who was, once Joyce's friend and then later rival.
But the shadow extends further, doesn't it? It seems to pull in this historical dimension of, well, shame and scandal.
Yes, because Gogarty's profession links him, maybe indirectly, to Sir William Wilde, Oscar Wilde's father.
Ah, the connection.
Right. Sir William was an eminent eye and ear specialist in Dublin, but he became embroiled in a really notorious court case involving sexual misconduct charges brought by a patient, Mary Travers.
So by introducing WP with this kind of medical and maybe religious ambiguity, Joyce is connecting him to a whole tradition of prominent Dublin figures, pillars of society, you might say, who are nevertheless compromised, often by sexual scandal.
Precisely. This witness isn't meant to be seen as objective. He's already tainted by association, by historical precedent, before he even says anything specific about the case.
And then there's his location. The text gives it as Null-Null Medical Square. Now, Medical Square, that clearly references Marion Square, which was, and I think still is, the heart of Dublin's medical establishment.
Correct. Lots of doctors' consulting rooms there.
But I want to pause on Null-Null. What's the implication of attaching that German colloquialism to Dublin's medical elite?
Null-Null. Yes, 00. In German slang, it means a public lavatory. A WC.
Oh, right.
The implication is, frankly, devastating. This supposedly respectable witness, supposedly located in the heart of professional Dublin society, Marion Square, is actually associated, metaphorically at least, with the lowest, most degraded kind of public place. A place of, well, filth and anonymity.
So WP, who might also stand for warming pan, like you said, a substitute cleric, maybe even a bot witness,
is operating out of a metaphorical public toilet. So the truth he offers, if any, is polluted right from its source. It's compromised from the get-go.
And his demeanor doesn't exactly inspire confidence either. He's sullenly cautioned against yawning, which isn't a great start for a witness.
Now, suggests boredom or disrespect.
And then when he finally speaks, we find he smiled. He had had a one bumper at parting from Mrs. Mulrow in the morning. A one bumper? He's had a drink?
Oh, more than likely. A bumper was a full glass of liquor, often toasted and drunk right down. So he's probably drunk, or at least tipsy, on an early morning drink before giving testimony. Not exactly reliable.
And his claim about where he was overnight is even worse, isn't it? He claims she slept with a bona fides.
Yes, and that's classic Joyce layered slang. On one hand, bona could be slang for a woman, suggesting he spent the night with a lover, perhaps Mrs. Mulrow herself.
Okay.
But on the other hand, under Irish licensing laws back then, a pub could stay open late, after normal closing hours, specifically to serve bona fide travelers, people who were genuinely traveling more than a certain distance and needed lodging or refreshment.
Ah, the traveler loophole for late-night drinking.
Exactly. So either way you read it, whether he was consorting with a woman all night or just exploiting a legal loophole to keep drinking until dawn, his activities pretty much preclude him from being an objective, reliable eyewitness to anything that might have happened in Phoenix Park in the early morning hours.
Right. His alibi actually disqualifies him. Now, he tries to recall the date of the supposed event, claiming he was there to remember the filth of November. This is where the historical dirt really starts surfacing, isn't it?
Absolutely. The memory of the filth of November is such a sinister little twist on the famous Guy Fawkes Day chant. Remember, remember. The 5th of November.
Gunpowder, treason, and plot.
Right. But by changing fifth to filth, Joyce connects this public historical observance, Guy Fawkes Day, directly to an obsolete slang word for a prostitute, which was filth.
Wow. So his memory isn't about civic duty or historical fact at all.
No, it's immediately tied to low-life sin, prostitution, public disorder. The entire foundation of the prosecution's case, as presented by this witness, seems built on a potentially drunken man's hazy memory, which itself is framed in terms of prostitution. It's incredibly shaky ground.
And then, just in the space of a few lines, the language just accelerates wildly. It feels like time itself is being compressed. He links the Jubilees of Juno, which sounds like June, or maybe April showers,
with the dates of Old Langsyne. That must be Old Lang Syne, New Year's Eve, but mixed with anxiety.
And links them both to December, all within what he calls the ephemerides of profane history.
Yes, and this is the perfect moment to bring in Vico again, as we sort of promised.
Mm-hmm.
Joyce is immediately yanking this local, maybe contemporary crime right into the grand, cyclical, Viconian view of history. Time here isn't linear at all, it's collapsing in on itself.
He explicitly states that all these different dates are all one with Tournai, Yat-sen, and Temera.
Exactly. Let's unpack that Tournai, Yat-sen, and Temera. Tournai is a city in Belgium, maybe representing the past yesterday.
Okay.
Yat-sen seems to combine now, German jetzt, with slay, pointing maybe to a violent present today.
And Temera.
Temera is often linked to Macpherson's Ossian poems, specifically his name for Tara, the ancient seat of the Irish High Kings, so tomorrow, the future, but rooted in ancient myth.
So Tournai gets to slay, and Temera yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Precisely. That single phrase means that the events being discussed in this trial are simultaneously a European affair, Tournai, a present-day crisis, Yet-to-slay, and an ancient mythological Irish event, Temora Tara. The local transgression of HCE, whatever it was, is just the latest iteration of some eternal sin or pattern.
It fits the Viconian idea perfectly. Societies cycling through theocratic, aristocratic, democratic, ages, then chaos, then starting over.
Yes, and this witness's ability, or perhaps inability, to distinguish between these times, compressing them all into one point, confirms that this trial is happening, in Joyce's view, doing one of those recurrences, one of those cycles.
And finally, his key observation, the thing that struck him particularly, which sounds like particularly, but maybe with a hint of boar hunting or something violent.
Could be. Pig sticking was a colonial sport.
Right, and the witnesses he names are Sam, him, and Moffat, which are, well, pretty thinly disguised biblical figures, aren't they? Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah.
Yes, the three sons who witnessed Noah's nakedness, tying them again to a foundational moment of shame and observation in biblical history, the shared sin of mankind, perhaps, that led to the flood.
But the text immediately undercuts their agency. It says, "There's not to reason why."
That's a direct quote, isn't it, from Tennyson's The Charge of the Light Brigade.
It is. There's not to reason why, there's but to do and die.
So these witnesses, Sam, him, and Moffat, they aren't presented as intellectual agents or moral philosophers trying to understand the event. They are merely passive observers, like the soldiers in the poem. They're recipients of observational power, maybe, who simply relay what they think they saw without necessarily grasping the broader moral or historical context. They're instruments, perhaps, not analysts.
Okay, so the striking thing that WP, our unreliable eye, ear, nose, throat witness, observes, the central figure that emerges in the prosecution's narrative is Hyacinth O'Donnell. WP was apparently petrified, which seems to mean both petrified with shock, maybe, and also invoking St. Patrick, to see, hear, taste, and smell HOD. There again, the four non-tactile senses. Touch is still missing.
Yes, the pattern continues. And Hyacinth O'Donnell, HOD, that's a direct echo of HCE, isn't it? Makes the identity link, or at least the parallel, pretty explicit.
It does, but HOD is also a name loaded with Irish history, right?
Hugely loaded. It immediately connects to Pat O'Donnell, the man who famously assassinated James Carey in 1883. Carey was the informer, the invincible, who turned state's evidence in the 1882 Phoenix Park murders case.
The very murders that took place in the park that's central to HCE's alleged crime.
Exactly. So by giving HCE's antagonistic son figure this name, Hyacinth O'Donnell, Joyce immediately throws this whole trial into the vortex of political betrayal, informing, and retributive violence that really defines so much of modern Irish history. It's incredibly potent.
And HOD isn't just presented as a figure connected to killing, he's introduced as a mixer and word painter with a BA.
Right. He's the son figure who uses vivid artistic language. That's the word painter, the Shem, the penman archetype.
Yeah.
But he's also a mixer, which means a troublemaker, an antagonist, someone who stirs things up.
So quite a contrast with WP, the passive, maybe drunken observer.
Absolutely. WP is passive. HOD seems to be the active force here. He's the artistic, creative, but also possibly morally compromised son. And his weapon of choice is described as part of a civis pacem, Gael-tacked for dungfork, wielded on the fair green of medieval Dublin.
Okay, civis pacem. That sounds like Latin.
It is. It's from the Latin phrase civis pacem parabellum.
If you want peace, prepare for war.
Exactly. A famous Roman military maxim. But the text immediately undercuts it, telling us it's Gael-tacked Irish dialect for a dungfork, or maybe a pitchfork.
Wow, that's a staggering contrast. He's armed with this grand classical military metaphor for preparedness, but the reality is just a lowly farm tool, a dungfork.
Yes. The conflict is framed as simultaneously epic, a preparation for war, and utterly absurd, a fight with a manure fork on a fair ground. It's that constant Joycean juxtaposition of the high and the low.
And the location, the fair green of medieval Dublin, places the crime right in the ancient commercial heart of the city.
It does. It ties this contemporary-seeming event back to the origins of Dublin's civic life, its commerce, maybe its foundational conflicts, another layer, perhaps, of that Viconian grounding and origins.
Now, the alleged crime itself supposedly took place at the mysterious 24 o'clock. What does that signify? Midnight.
It could mean midnight, yes, but the use of 24 o'clock, that kind of uninterrupted continental-style counting system, might also suggest a continuous perpetual time. No reset at midnight, no breaks in the cycle of guilt. It just keeps going.
And what did O'Donnell supposedly do at this perpetual midnight? He sought to sack, sock, stab, and slaughter single-handed two kings, named Gutch McGale and Roaring O'Crian Jr.
Right. These kings, they're not fixed historical figures, are they? They feel like changelings, sort of unlocalized, maybe composite royalty.
Gutch McGale and Roaring O'Crian. Any echoes there?
Well, Roaring O'Crian certainly echoes Rory O'Connor, who was the last High King of Ireland before the Norman invasion.
Yeah.
A figure of failed authority. And Gush McGale might connect to Festy King, that drunken local king figure we encountered earlier in the wake.
So the crime is essentially regicide, or attempted regicide, but against this unstable, maybe even ridiculous composite figure of authority.
Exactly. It's both a monumental crime, killing a king, and potentially a drunken brawl, attacking Festy King.
And the source of this epic conflict, we're told bad blood existed between them since before the Mise of Lewis. That's a specific historical reference, isn't it?
It is. The Mise of Lewis was a peace agreement in 1264 during the Second Barons' War in England. It recognized certain baronial rights. So Joyce is dating the origin of this feud back to medieval English political settlements.
But then it escalates immediately beyond mere medieval politics. The text says the bad blood existed on the ground of the boar's trespass on the bull.
And this is a beautiful Joycean compression of conflict.
Yeah.
On one level, yes, it clearly suggests the Boer Wars, the Dutch farmer, the Boer, trespassing against British imperial interests, often symbolized by John Bull.
Okay, so colonial conflict.
Yes. But at its deepest level, the Boers trespass on the bull. Well, who's the archetypal farmer, the tiller of the soil? Cain. And who's associated with livestock? The bull. His brother, Abel.
Cain and Abel.
It evokes the primal transgression, the first murder, the farmer, Cain bore, against the keeper of livestock, Abel. So the roots of this fight, this bad blood, aren't just in medieval England or the Boer Wars, but potentially in the foundational biblical murder that, in a sense, set human history or profane history in motion. This petty squabble is framed as being literally as old as civilization itself.
But then, just when it feels cosmically important, Joyce does his classic deflationary maneuver, doesn't he? The motives for this primordial epic battle are suddenly reduced to incredibly trivial, petty disputes.
Absolutely. The text suggests they fought over whether the other man first parted his polar beaver hair in 2 ways, arguing about how someone parts their hair.
Vanity, pure vanity.
Or alternatively, they were squabbling over a nippy in a noveletta.
A nippy, like a waitress.
Yes, nippy was common slang for a waitress, often working in those Lyons tea shops. And noveletta suggests a cheap romance story. So the grand conflict over dominion, history, maybe even theology, boils down to either wounded pride about hairstyle, or common jealousy over a tea shop girl, or maybe a fictional romantic heroine.
This feels like the essence of Joyce's worldview, doesn't it? The fall of man isn't some majestic tragedy. It's usually just a trivial, grubby squabble over sex or pride. The local tawdry event, maybe HCE's original slip-up, is the tiny kernel from which all of history, all these cycles, spring.
Exactly. The microcosm contains the macrocosm.
So, the fight itself might be reduced to a squabble over a girl or hair parting, but the support for this brawl seems mythic, signaling that even the most trivial sin can have epic, historical consequences. The litigants, the kings, are supported by local kongsmen and Donalds, which sounds like king's men, maybe echoing King Billy and the Jacobites, but also maybe the kings of Oran and Dalkey.
Local, almost folklore kings.
Including the goat king of Killerglen. That's the Puck Fair reference, isn't it? Where they clown a goat.
It is. The Puck Fair in County Kerry, where a wild male goat, King Puck, is ritually captured and crowned and reigns over the town for a few days. It's this mix of high royalty concepts and very earthy local folk ritual.
And this mix of high and low supporters is egged on by better women with bow-strung hair of Carrot the Genuine readiness.
Now that is a fantastic, incredibly specific historical reference. It calls to mind the story of the women of Carthage during the final siege by the Romans in 146 BC.
What did they do?
According to legend, when the Carthaginians ran out of materials for bowstrings, the noble women of the city cut off their long hair to provide sinew for the war effort. It's meant to be a genuinely heroic, desperate act of patriotic sacrifice.
But Joyce twists it.
Completely. He takes that image of heroic sacrifice and applies it to a mob of better women, which could mean upper-class women, but in Dublin slang often meant prostitutes, or at least women of loose morals who were waving crimson petties.
Petticoats, or maybe red stockings associated with prostitutes.
Likely both connotations are there. So these women, instead of making heroic sacrifices, were just waving their underwear, essentially, to cheer on this grubby street fight. Heroism and low comedy are completely intertwined. Sacrifice becomes spectacle.
And the scene just explodes into a courtroom uproar that seems to reflect the street brawl itself. We hear cries from the thick-sets, the heavies, the muscular guys, and the Mid-Dubliners, the Dubliners.
Shouting, "Exhibit his relics."
Which seems like a demand for the exposure of HCE's male genitalia, right? Continuing the theme of sexual scandal and public shaming.
Absolutely. The whole atmosphere is driven by sexual innuendo, mob frenzy, Voyeurism, it's a public spectacle of accusation.
But then this mob frenzy, this demand for physical evidence, is immediately undermined by the, quote, quag facts revealed under cross-examination in what's called the dead man's dark scenery court.
A very evocative name for the court.
It says the truth oozed out, that the three-partied ambush, presumably involving the two girls and HCE, was laid twixt dusk and dawn near a tree in Phoenix Park. Standard enough detail, but then comes the crucial bit about visibility.
Yes, the lighting conditions.
The text states, "There was not as much light from the widowed moon as would dim a child's altar."
That's a beautiful poetic line. But it's more than just poetry.
Wait, so this isn't just a description of poor light. You're saying this is actually, potentially, a tactical legal maneuver,
Right.
linking HCE's defense to one of the most famous legal defenses in history.
Precisely. This specific detail about the lack of moonlight, the widowed moon, is almost certainly a reference to Abraham Lincoln's famous Almanac trial of 1858.
Lincoln, how does he fit in?
Well, Lincoln was defending a man called Duff Armstrong, accused of murder. The key prosecution eyewitness claimed he saw the crime clearly by the light of the moon overhead. Lincoln, famously, produced an almanac for that specific date, proving that the moon was actually very low on the horizon, possibly set, and would have provided almost no light at the time of the alleged murder.
And he got him acquitted.
He did. It destroyed the eyewitness testimony. So Joyce, by including this very specific detail about the dim moonlight, is essentially telling us that the witnesses in this Wake trial, WP, maybe others, despite their drunken bravado or their dramatic storytelling, simply could not have seen the alleged crime clearly. The physical conditions made it impossible.
So the prosecution's entire factual basis is potentially undermined by the celestial mechanics of the night, just like in Lincoln's case.
Exactly. It's an incredibly clever piece of literary borrowing. It brings the high-stakes American legal theater right into this chaotic Dublin brawl, suggesting that perhaps the most effective defense here isn't a moral one, but a technical one based on reasonable doubt about visibility.
That's just ingenious. It adds another layer of doubt onto everything we've heard so far. Okay, so since visibility seems to have failed as a reliable source of evidence, the cross-examiner now has to tackle the mixer himself, Hyacinth O'Donnell, directly, questioning the nature of his perception.
Right. They go after his senses.
He's asked, was he one of those lucky cocks for whom the audible, visible, noticeable, edible world existed? Now that sounds familiar. It's almost a direct paraphrase of Oscar Wilde, isn't it? Wilde's claim that the visible world existed for him.
It is very close to Wilde's aesthetic stance. And the witness, Hyacinth, who represents Shem, the artist figure, responds by claiming this total, almost overwhelming sensory engagement with the world.
How does he put it?
He states he is cognitively sure of it. He claims he's living and loving and breathing morphomelisopha pancreates.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Morphomelisopha pancreates, all forming, all melodious, all wise, all creating.
Something like that. It's this dizzying declaration of a completely holistic existence. He's claiming his perception is so incredibly sensitive that, quote, whenever he thought he heard he saw, he felt he made a bell clipper, clipper, clipper.
Clipper, clipper, like clipper. What's that sound supposed to be? An alarm clock.
It could be. It certainly suggests a kind of Pavlovian response, maybe that jarring transition from sleep where the sound of an alarm clock instantly triggers full anxious awareness. It's the sensory rush of consciousness reasserting itself.
But notice, again, heard, he saw, he felt. Taste is swapped for felt, but touch, the tactile sense, is still missing from that list of active perception.
That's a sharp observation.
Oh.
Yes, the pattern of avoiding direct touch continues, even in this claim of total sensory immersion. Interesting.
So the cross-examiner, hearing this grand claim, immediately tries to discredit him, right? By questioning his very name, playing on lugs and treason's names.
Yeah, lugs meaning ears, but also maybe fools or dupes. And truies suggests sows, pigs, maybe lies. Truism's twisted. So ears and sows, or maybe lies and deception.
And he asks if the witness is pediculously so, which sounds like particularly so, but with a nasty edge.
Exactly. Pediculus is the genus for lice. So pediculously means lousy, infested with lice. He's asking, are you particularly this person, or are you lousily this person?
And the witness, Hyacinth Shem, seems to accept the filth, doesn't he? Replying, as cad could be. Cad meaning, what? A low fellow?
Yes, an ungentlemanly fellow. But cad could also play on cadaver. He accepts the low status, the potential lousiness. His name that emerges, or one of his names, as Morbus O Somebody, Surturde's son.
Morbus, oh, somebody. Morbus meaning disease.
Yes, and morbus pediculosis was the old name for a severe body lice infestation. So it links the accuser, the witness, directly back to disease, infestation, degradation.
And Serge's Aunt's Saturday's Child.
Could be Saturday's Child from the nursery rhyme. Saturday's Child works hard for his living, connecting him to labor, a low status. Or perhaps it twists towards Wednesday's Child, who is full of woe. He's presented as this troubled, hard-working, potentially diseased figure.
He's then identified explicitly as the green-eyed mister. Now, we all know the green-eyed monster is jealousy from Othello.
Standard interpretation.
But in Finnegans' wake, especially when it appears close to descriptions of eyes, doesn't green-eyed often carry another connotation, something more physical?
Yes, it frequently seems to signal physical decay, specifically glaucoma, an eye disease that can cause blindness and sometimes gives the eye a greenish tint. Joyce himself suffered terribly with eye problems, including glaucoma.
So it's the corruption of vision, potentially, paired with the corruption of spirit jealousy. The witness is jealous, diseased, and maybe even literally going blind. His perception is compromised physically and morally.
That fits the pattern perfectly. Now, when asked how he achieved his BA, his Bachelor of Arts degree, he replies cryptically that it was like his pole.
Like his pole. What could that mean?
Well, it has at least 3 potential and quite dark meanings. First, pole could be slang for head, so maybe like he got it because of his father, HCE, nepotism.
Yep.
Second, a pole degree was Cambridge University slang for a pass degree obtained without honors, just scraping through. So not a mark of distinction.
All right. And the third, more sinister meaning. You mentioned this connects back to Joyce's research into sensational crimes.
Indeed. Joyce collected newspaper clippings, and one related story involved a murder case where a severed pole was actually presented to a witness in court for identification.
Good grief.
So the witness's BA, his mark of education, is thus associated, through this pun, with gruesome physical trauma, murder, and the public spectacle of identifying a victim's remains. Violence underpins even his supposed intellectual achievement.
Okay, now we seem to reach a crucial point. The great physical description where the identity seems to shift definitively towards HCE himself, or at least encompasses him. We get 4 defining physical characteristics listed for this figure.
Yes, the cross-grain trapper.
Right. He has murky odd oogs, offlerated arrows, inquiline nase, and a twitcherous mouth. Let's break those down.
Okay, murky odd oogs. That sounds like mighty odd eyes.
Yeah.
Often read, as you suggested with glaucoma, as a reference perhaps to Joyce's own troubled eyesight.
Offlerated R's, perforated ears, maybe from earrings or injury.
Possibly. Then, an inquiline nase. Not the noble aquiline nose like an eagle's beak, but an inquiline nose. An inquiline is an animal that lives commensally in the nest or burrow of another.
So a tenant nose, suggesting he lives off others or is maybe a temporary resident in his own face. It implies dependency or lack of true ownership.
Exactly. And finally, a twitcherous mouth. That suggests both a physically twitching mouth, maybe indicating nervousness or even dementia, and a treacherous mouth, one that speaks betrayal or lies.
So again, we see 4 physical parts: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, mirroring the 4 senses WP used, completing this composite picture of the man under scrutiny. But then comes the moment of, well, ultimate disclosure, the litany of names.
Ah yes, the cascade of names.
Helmingham, Urchinwine, Rudder, Egbert. And it goes on, ending with Yigdwala, Bentley, Osmond, Dysart, Yggdrasilman. It's this absurd, sprawling list, mixing Anglo-Saxon kings, maybe Norse mythology, geography.
This list is absolutely core to HCE's identity. Because if you take the first letter of many of these names, sometimes with a bit of flexibility Joyce often employed.
You get the acronym.
You get the acronym.
Okay.
Helmingham, Urchinwine, Rudder, or maybe Rory Roderick for the R. Egbert, C, usually linked to Cromwell, or maybe Charlemagne, Osmond, Magnal, or Moors. Egbert or Ethelbert again. Samson.
Okay, that's here comes.
And then it continues. Egbert or Ethelred, Victoria or Viola, Ethelred again, Rudder again, Yidwala, Bentley, Osmond, Dysart, a place linked to Cromwell. Yggdrasil, the world tree from Norse myth.
Here comes everybody, HCE.
Exactly. It's woven together from names of English kings, Egbert, Ethelred, Norse mythology, Odin associated with Yggdrasil, major historical figures like Cromwell, maybe Charlemagne, Magnal, biblical figures, Samson, place names, Dysart, maybe even literary figures.
So this is the definitive statement, isn't it? The man being accused in this murky Phoenix Park incident is not just a man. He is every man. He is the composite of all kings, all historical eras, all human failings, all geographies.
It's the ultimate Viconian revelation within the text. The individual event, the specific crime, is merely the contemporary manifestation of an eternal cyclical pattern of human error and experience. He is... Here comes everybody.
He is Chudley Magnol once more, which must be Charlemagne returning, and Arthur is invoked. Art thou sure? Are you sure? The current trial is presented as the mythical return of the ancient, great, but ultimately flawed authority figure.
Yes, the identities cycle endlessly, and the event itself, HCE's exposure, is linked to cosmic destruction. The dialogue references the renting of his rock.
Which sounds like...
It has multiple echoes. Primarily, the tearing of the temple veil in Jerusalem upon Christ's death, as described in Matthew 27.51, a moment of cosmic shift. But it also resonates with Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods in Norse mythology, when the world is destroyed and rocks are rent asunder. HCE's uncovering is portrayed as a kind of apocalypse.
And the agents of this uncovering, the accusers, described earlier as two child spies, or damsels defendants, are now maybe linked to the three wicked Vancouver's forests.
Yes, that sounds like three wicked uncoverers, perhaps linked to Vancouver, British Columbia, bringing in a colonial echo. But fundamentally, they are the agents of this final, perhaps unwelcome revelation. They are exposing HCE in a way that feels catastrophic.
And the physical consequences of this exposure immediately return us to themes of filth and disease. The question of refreshment is raised, focusing on the founts of bounty playing there in Phoenix Park.
Which sounds lovely, like fountains.
But the text immediately shifts from the poetic fountain to the crude reality of bodily functions, likely urine. And it contrasts two figures associated with Dublin monuments, the noble Irish rebel, Lord Edward Fitzgerald,
Heroic figure.
with Sir Philip Crampton, a prominent Dublin surgeon whose memorial fountain in the city was, according to rumor and Dublin lore, sometimes associated with his work treating syphilis.
Ah, the Crampton Memorial, yes. So it's that constant Joycean duality again. Heroism versus degradation, purity versus disease. The body, like history, is fallen. HCE's shame isn't just moral or political. It's presented as medical, physical, tied to the very fountains that should represent civic life and purity, but are instead linked to waste and venereal disease.
So as the cross-examination really bears down, Hyacinth O'Donnell, HOD, seems to admit to his own degraded state. He's identified as a stoker tempted by eavesdripping against the driver.
That's dense. A train stoker, a manual laborer, but also tempted by eavesdripping, eavesdropping, maybe linked to the original sin, against the driver, against authority perhaps, or maybe the angel driver mentioned in Islamic tradition, the recording angel.
So religious, mechanical, and primal temptation metaphors all collapse into one image.
Seems so. And he confesses directly to being drunk as a fika, which neatly fuses drunk as a fish with drunk as a bishop, high and low drunkenness combined.
His ejaculations to his cross-can Lorne, what's that about?
Well, ejaculations meaning outbursts, shouts. Cross-can Lorne seems to blend Corsica, maybe Napoleon's origin, Corsican, with the title of a famous Irish drinking song, An Creasin Lan, meaning the little full jug of whiskey. So his cries are a mix of maybe revolutionary fervor and drunken sentimentality.
And his religion. Not devout, apparently.
No, just the see you Sunday sort. Completely nominal, casual affiliation. Everything about him screams compromise, mixture, lack of purity.
When he's pressed to define a pederast prig, a rather loaded term itself, meaning maybe a petty thief, a dandy, possibly with sexual connotations.
He deflects with more layered slang. He says it's just a gent who prayed his Lent.
Prayed his Lent.
Sounds pious, but it's likely a pun on pays the rent. And the gentleman who pays the rent was common Dublin slang for the pig, because pigs often literally paid the peasant farmer's rent. So he defines this prig figure not through morality, but through a link to a degraded, animalistic figure, the pig. It's total deflection.
Now, the failure isn't just moral, it becomes linguistic. The interrogator asks if he had Ragnarized their Court's marshals.
Right.
Recognized their court marshals.
Yes, but Ragnarized brings in the Viking figure Ragnar Lodbrok, perhaps suggesting a kind of savage or foreign disruption of the court. But crucially, as the outline notes, this phrasing almost certainly references the notorious Miles Joyce case.
Right. This reference needs explaining because it feels critical for understanding the theme of justice failing due to language barriers in this whole trial scene. What exactly was the Miles Joyce injustice?
Miles Joyce, or Meolra Seoi in Irish, was a native Irish speaker from a remote Gael-tact area in County Galway. In 1882, he and several others were accused of the brutal Memtrasna murders. Critically, Miles Joyce spoke no English. His trial was conducted entirely in English, with evidence given against him, including alleged confessions from informers, translated, or rather mistranslated, by interpreters whose competence and impartiality were seriously questioned.
So he couldn't understand the proceedings or defend himself properly?
Effectively, no. Despite protesting his innocence in Irish, he was convicted, largely based on this disputed, poorly translated evidence, and he was hanged. It became a notorious symbol of judicial murder, a profound injustice resulting directly from the failure or perhaps the deliberate manipulation of the legal system when faced with linguistic difference. The court failed to understand or chose not to understand the language of the accused.
So, by invoking this case here through Ragnarized and the context of court proceedings, Joyce is signaling that this entire trial of HCE, this testimony we're hearing, is conducted under the shadow of potential mistranslation, political bias, linguistic confusion, and the possibility of grave, even capital error. The court itself is fundamentally flawed linguistically.
Precisely. It casts doubt on the entire process of judgment we're witnessing.
And the linguistic chaos just continues, doesn't it? With a riddle testing his local knowledge of the 4 provinces of Ireland. Londonderry, Coke or Skillies, spell me Gart without a gate.
Yes, those sound like mangled place names. Londonderry, Londonderry, Cork, Skerries, Skillies, and Gort. He's asked to spell Gort without a G, gate.
And the answer given is hardly a drope. Hardly a drop.
Seems so. Which could mean a few things. Maybe he's too drunk to answer the riddle properly, confirming his earlier admission. Or maybe he's denying having had hardly a drop of drink, contradicting his earlier admission. Or perhaps it's a comment on the lack of spirit or truth in the proceedings.
Whatever it means, the riddle, which should provide clarity, only seems to reinforce the witness's obfuscation and unreliability.
Exactly. Now, the next point is a legal matter. The expiry date of some grazing rights. A very mundane, bureaucratic detail.
Does the witness know when they expired?
No. He says he doesn't know when they expired. Maybe with the goat's sire, linking back to the Puck Fair Goat King. But he says his mother-in-waiters has the recipes for the price of the coffin.
His mother-in-law has the receipt for the coffin.
Yes. It's beautifully absurd. The mother-in-law figure, likely ALP, Anna Olivia Porbel, the river woman, is the mother of waters, suggested by waiters, and she holds the literal receipt for a coffin. The crucial legal date, the expiry of land rights, a deeply bureaucratic matter, is apparently tied directly to the date of a family death, and the evidence is hidden away in a personal document, a coffin receipt.
So the truth isn't in the public record, but in a private domestic secret about death.
Precisely. And she, ALP, is described as the velocipede that could tell them Kit Kat. Velocipede suggests speed, maybe her flowing river nature. Kit Kat refers to a specific size of portrait, shorter than half-length, named after the Kit Kat Club. So she's fast, and perhaps holds the key information in a concise, maybe partial form. The vital legal truth is hidden within a family secret about mortality.
The interrogator must be getting utterly frustrated by now with all this linguistic layering and evasion.
You can feel it. He reverts to Latin, the language of law, and the church, trying to force a clear, classical answer. Quae hircum.
Meaning, why the goat? Bringing back that Puck Fair motif again.
And then, unde gentium fe, which seems like an unfinished quote maybe from Virgil, meaning, where on earth are you hurrying from, or where do you come from? The judicial system is trying desperately to pin him down with the authority of Latin.
And what's the witness's response to this classical interrogation?
He gives another cryptic answer. Sire, I am deed. Which sounds like, Sir, I am dead, but sire is Irish for westwards. So, westwards I am dead, or gone west, a common idiom for being dead or finished.
So, evasion again. And he describes his position as dazzling on the edge of a volcano.
Yes, dazzling or dancing on the edge of a volcano. That exact phrase, dancing on a volcano, was famously used by the French politician Narcisse Aquiles-Elvendy just before the July Revolution of 1830 in France, signaling a sense of imminent political and social catastrophe lurking beneath a seemingly calm surface.
So the witness is admitting he's in an incredibly precarious, potentially explosive situation.
Exactly. And now from this precarious point, we plunge into the deepest secrets yet, moving beyond even spoken language into ancient codes. The text mentions he intended to study Pular, which is a West African language.
An interesting detail in itself, another geographical jump.
But the focus shifts immediately and entirely to Ogham.
Ogham, the ancient Irish alphabet made of lines and noshes, usually cut into stone.
Yes, the earliest known form of writing in Ireland. But crucially, Ogham was also reportedly used, or adapted, as a kind of deaf and dumb sign language, using hand and finger signals corresponding to the letters.
Ah, so the suggestion is that the real secret about HCE, the core truth of this trial, is so deep or maybe so dangerous that it cannot be communicated through ordinary spoken or written language anymore. It requires gestures, ancient codes, secret signs.
That seems to be the implication. And the source lists some of the highly esoteric traditional names associated with the Ogham ciphers or kennings used to remember them. Shirt of two shifts, Finn's three-shanked ladder, head and thighs under a bush, and serpent to a mill race through the heather.
Those are incredibly evocative, strange phrases. What's the significance of presenting the testimony or the secret behind it through these cryptic visual codes?
Well, Ogham reinforces the themes of concealed identity, ancient wisdom, and maybe knowledge hidden from the colonizer or the uninitiated. These names themselves suggest secrets hidden in clothing, shirt of two shifts, in myth, Finn's three-shanked ladder linked to Finn McCool, in the body, head and thighs, and in nature, serpent through the heather. If the ultimate truth has to be expressed through a silent, archaic, coded sign language, it implies that ordinary language has utterly failed to convey it, and perhaps that the only reliable testimony is buried deep in the past, in the land, in the body, decipherable only to those who know the code.
It suggests the truth beyond words.
Or at least beyond these words, the words being used in the chaotic, contradictory courtroom setting.
And just when we think we've maybe grasped this ancient Irish sign language, the text performs another violent shift. We jump to a Chinese allegory.
Completely jarring, isn't it?
It starts with a reference to a pontiff's order, which might echo the papal bull Laudabiliter, the controversial 12th century decree supposedly giving Ireland to King Henry II of England, a foundational moment of external imposition.
And from that hint of historical grievance, the language instantly transforms into Chinese Pidgin English. We get phrases like "Gully glory to Joss," meaning glory to God, Joss being Pidgin for good idol, and Lily and Tulily, really and truly.
Why the shift to Chinese Pidgin?
It universalizes the conflict yet again, but in a very specific way. The reference to second tone Sun Yat-sen clearly points to Sun Yat-sen, the pivotal figure in the Chinese Revolution that overthrew the Qing dynasty.
So the local Dublin trial, already layered with Irish history, is now being presented as having a direct parallel in global revolutionary movements, specifically the overthrow of an old empire in China.
Precisely. And the text then specifically mentions the Boxer Rebellion.
Okay.
Boxers flay of the face. The Boxers were a movement in China around 1900 who violently opposed foreign influence and Christian missionaries.
So HCE's crime, or the conflict surrounding him, is being connected to a major global uprising against Western dominance, xenophobia, colonialism. It's political on a world scale now.
Yes. The conflict is described as setting odds evens at defiance, challenging the established order and taking the laud, praise or maybe lord, from Laborator, perhaps a dig at the English Labour Party, or maybe playing on Laudabiliter again, taking the authority away from the papal grant.
It's the global political context for the family psychodrama. The Boxers fought against Westerners in China. Many Irish fought against British influence in Ireland. The trial becomes this microcosm of worldwide colonial and revolutionary tensions.
And the section concludes with the mention of three non-starters, Tobe, Dilk, and Hallie, who sound like Tom, Dick, and Harry. Three ordinary soldiers, perhaps, who are described as not being in love with the game. It suggests a weariness even among ordinary men with these eternal, perhaps meaningless cycles of conflict and revolution.
Okay, we're nearing the climax of this testimony sequence. The venue itself seems to shift, reflecting all this political and revolutionary energy we just discussed. It moves from the king's head to the Republican's arms.
Yes, from a pub sign suggesting monarchy to one suggesting revolution. The symbolic landscape changes.
And the final location of the alleged misconduct seems to be settled. It happened round Father Time's backside, clearly HCE's backside, mixing Father Time with the physical father.
In Regents in the Plant Sound reigning, which sounds like Regent's Park in London, perhaps, but maybe also evokes the reigns of kings, and the plant sound could be Plantagenet kings, all happening in the reign, the reigning suggesting ALP's presence too.
The fight itself is now described in almost apocalyptic terms. It's a wildfires night on all the Betty Daligers. Walpurgis night.
Possibly Walpurgis night, the night of witches' revels. Betty Gallagher's might suggest moonlight, or maybe just general chaos. It becomes this cosmic battle of good versus evil, with St. Michael's swords flashing against Nyx, the devil's toasting forks, pricking the thunderclouds overhead.
And the specific site of this cosmic brawl is pinpointed as Guinea's Gap.
Guinea's Gap, a marvelous Joycean pun. On one level, it connects to Guinness Stout, the absolute staple of Dublin life, maybe suggesting a drunken brawl near the brewery or involving the drink.
But Guinea's Gap also sounds very much like Ginnunga Gap.
Exactly. Ginnunga Gap, the vast primordial void in Norse mythology, the empty space between fire and ice from which the entire cosmos was created.
So the crime, the fight, occurred not just in a specific Dublin location, but metaphorically in the cosmic empty space of creation itself. Its origins are pre-creation.
That's the implication. It links HCE's fallback to the very beginning of everything. And then, after all this cosmic framing, we get the final, almost humiliating truth about the devoted couple of girls involved in the incident.
They weren't damsels or spies, after all.
No. They were, the text reveals, only two dissipated solicitresses. Disappointed, perhaps, but also dispainted, their makeup running. And solicitresses clearly meaning prostitutes.
So just ordinary prostitutes.
Yes. Found on Saturn's mountain fort,
Yep.
which could be Mount Othrys, the Titan's fortress in Greek myth overthrown by Zeus. So, the grand mythological crime, the cosmic battle, is ultimately reduced to HCE engaging in some kind of failed, petty transaction with common prostitutes on a hill associated with overthrown gods. The fall is utterly mundane at its core.
And then the twins appear, Gamal and Camel. They recognize each other, confirming the Viconian cycle of repetition, the return. Yes, your brother. Absolutely.
Gamal and Camel sound like Gemellus and Camellus, who were, according to some Irish legends, doorkeepers at the ancient royal site of Tara. So, figures of access, recognition. There absolutely confirms the absolute certainty of this cyclical brotherhood, the pattern repeating. And this affirmation sets the stage perfectly for the crucial, devastating ambiguity that follows.
The ambiguity centers on the word hole, doesn't it? The accuser is asked if he was referring to the hole in the wall.
Yes, and the hole in the wall was, and still is, the nickname of a famous Dublin pub located right beside a turnstile entrance to Phoenix Park. It was historically known as a place where, supposedly, soldiers from the nearby barracks could be discreetly passed drinks or money through an actual hole or hatch in the wall. It implies bribery, corruption, illicit dealings.
So this suggests the crime HDE committed was maybe financial corruption, political graft related to his position, or dealings in the park.
That's one possibility presented. But the text immediately introduces the deeper sexual implication. Or was he not eluding from the hold of the woman?
Eluding instead of eluding. Interesting slip. But the hold of the woman clearly meaning the vagina, the female genitalia, the source of the sexual crime aspect.
Yeah, exactly. Joyce forces the reader and the court to confront this core ambiguity. Is HCE guilty of financial or political corruption, the hole-in-the-wall pub transaction? Or is he guilty of sexual sin, the hole of the woman?
And the answer seems to be both.
It seems inescapable.
Mm-hmm.
The witness confirms that when he speaks of the hole, he is in fact not eluding from the hole of the woman. The crime compasses both levels. It's financial, it's political, it's sexual simultaneously. It's this trifecta of shame that seems to define HCE's fault.
And the realization of this universal composite sin strikes the witness?
Like the crack that broke the bank in Multifarnham. Multifarnham is a place in Ireland, but the phrase clearly echoes the famous song title, The Man Who Broke the Bank at Monte Carlo. So it juxtaposes high-flying fame and fortune with sudden financial ruin and scandal. Once again, the revelation is catastrophic.
And the final ultimate accusation, it seems to turn back onto the witness himself, Hyacinth, now identified as Thomas the Doubter, Thor the Thunderer, the rudicist rotter in Roebuckdom. Roebuck is another Dublin area.
Yes, the accuser becomes the accused.
He is accused, astonishingly, in Yapanoi language, Japanese, another linguistic leap of causing a bad clap.
Which sounds like a bad chap, a bad fellow. But clap unequivocally is slang for gonorrhea.
So the witness, the son, the artist figure, is himself accused of spreading venereal disease. He's contaminated by the very sin, the sexual transgression that he's been describing or accusing his father figure of.
It collapses the distinction completely. And this leads directly, inevitably, to the final thunderous condemnation. The cross-examination, the entire testimony, culminates in that famous 100-letter word, the linguistic maximum of the accusation.
Let's hear it. Bloody for Mecklenburg, whereas quarters trumpa pornin in ni coxapa tuppa 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 strippa putanak.
Phew, it's the ultimate peak of linguistic density in this section. It's not just one word, it's like a global, multilingual chorus of utter condemnation, synthesizing Centuries, millennia maybe, of human filth, judgment, and sexual disgust into one single thunderclap.
Can we try and trace some of the international roots of this verbal fury? It seems to pull from everywhere.
We can try. It clearly combines elements from multiple languages, all aimed at denigration, particularly sexual denigration of women, but by extension, the accused HCE figure and now the witness too. You can hear echoes of Russian Blaien, often meaning bloody or whore, German muck, filth, and whore, Swedish hora, whore, Latin scordum and moyet, prostitute, adulteress, Italian puttana, whore, Irish triopak, prostitute.
So it essentially means bloody, awful, foul whore prostitute repeated in multiple tongues.
Yes, but layered with other insults too. Mecklenburg might be a German place name, perhaps adding a political or geographical slur. Cocksappa sounds like cocksap, maybe hinting at fellatio or just general crudeness. And crucially, near the end, Tippetapper striphook seems to contain tripper, the common slang for gonorrhea.
So it explicitly includes venereal disease in the condemnation as well.
Absolutely. It's the full, violent force of collective societal judgment, encompassing sexual sin, disease, foreignness, filth, betrayal, everything negative that's been hinted at throughout the testimony.
It just collapses all the low-life history, the family secrets, the political scandals, the sexual innuendo, the linguistic confusion into one single, massive, overwhelming linguistic utterance. It feels like the full weight of that Viconian return to chaos expressed as total, crushing condemnation.
Exactly. And faced with this impossible, comprehensive, multilingual accusation, what can the witness, O'Donnell Shim, possibly say?
He collapses.
Utterly. His final defeated response is simply, "You have it all right."
You have it all right. Is that an admission of guilt?
It feels like an acceptance of the universal condition, the universal guilt. It's perhaps an admission that although the specific facts of the Phoenix Park incident were obscured, maybe even unknowable, the collective global historical verdict of sin, the state of being HCE, of being human perhaps, is undeniable.
Yeah.
The artistic son, Shem, must accept the shame that attaches to the father, to everybody. He can't refute the thunder word.
Wow. What an absolutely exhaustive and frankly exhausting deep dive into just a few pages. We started by trying to figure out what happened in the dark in Phoenix Park. And we ended by witnessing what happens when all the accumulated filth in history, all the layers of human error, misunderstanding, and language are basically hurled at one composite man in a single 100-letter condemnation.
It really demonstrates Joyce's method perfectly, doesn't it? Using this single event, the trial, as a kind of prism through which all of human history, language, myth, and failure are refracted. The truth, in Joyce, is never singular. It's always hidden in these layers of miscommunication, misinterpretation, and the constant blending of identities, where the accuser inevitably becomes a reflection of the accused.
And that 100-letter word, it's not just an insult, is it? It feels like the final thunderous force of collective societal judgment.
It really does. Collapsing all those historical sins, adultery, prostitution, incest, maybe betrayal, disease, into this single overwhelming utterance. The witness, the son, can only accept the inevitability of the accusation, the failure that attaches to the everyman figure he both accuses and embodies.
So the trial started by trying to find some kind of factual illumination in the dark, but it ended by revealing that perhaps the only truth that matters in the cyclical world is the universal collective guilt. A guilt so profound and complex it requires apparently 1,000 languages mashed together to even begin to express it fully.
A sobering thought.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. If the truth about humanity, or at least about HCE as everyman, is so complex, so mired in historical failure and linguistic confusion that it has to be expressed in that single global thunder word, well, what hope do we really have for understanding, or perhaps judging, the simpler, more localized sins and failings in our own lives? Where does that leave us?